Thank everybody for coming out this morning. Thank you. We do have a good turnout, and I want to thank everybody for coming out. Apologize for being a few minutes late. I never really realized how much my wife did in the morning. My wife's in Charleston this morning, and I got up a half hour earlier to feed the cats, put the dogs out, clean the litter, feed the dogs. I should have got up an hour. But I got a really good turnout, and I welcome the congressman here. Our message today for the congressman, I know he has a message for us. He does such a good job representing us here. Today is Congressman McKinley's breakfast, legislative breakfast with the Morgantown Area Chamber of Commerce. I want to start first. We have a letter that we want to present to the congressman from the Morgantown Area Chamber of Commerce Transportation Committee and the Morgantown Montague Metropolitan Planning Organization. This letter is a direction in our future of a combined effort of the unity that we have in this county that we've built of collaboration and direction. Not only is it signed by the chairman of the Metropolitan Organization, but it's also signed by me as the chairman of the Transportation Committee. I know there's certain feelings of disunity in this community, but I tell you, they really don't exist. Those feelings of dissent, we understand there's always those that exist, but we do speak with one voice here. And to emphasize that, I've asked a member of WVU, but also a member of our Transportation Committee and a former mayor, to present this letter to you. And I'd like Ron Justice to come forward and present this letter. Ron?
Thank you, Congressman. We appreciate you being here. So thank you very much.
Okay. And basically, to explain, Eldon's point is correct, and there's a lot of people in this room that have worked tirelessly in our transportation network, and a lot of times we've been our own worst enemy because we can't get on the same page as to what the priorities should be. And what we've done with this letter, just to let everyone know, is a couple years ago, we as a transportation committee and the MPO worked to identify the mile ground as one of our high priority projects. And through the good work of the DOH and many people in this room, those contracts are being let. And Donnie Williams is right back there, and he's promised us that we're going to see dirt moving very, very soon on that project. And we've seen part of it already completed, the first leg of that. So what this identifies is, instead of overwhelming our delegation with a number of requests, that we get behind the next project, which is this Greenback Road corridor, and it also ties in the locks, because that's very important for commerce through the Army Corps, because we have two sets of locks in this area. And certainly the commerce is very important to have the one set of locks open as regularly as we can. And we've been faced with closure of those now for a few years. And as we've been told, both recreation use and commerce use will drive that opening, and we think we can justify staffing those. Now, that's a big ask, because I know there's a similar situation in many communities across the country, and it's going to be very competitive. But we tried to narrow our focus down on this Greenback corridor, which is already in our long-term transportation plan. It's in the funding cycle for part of the roads project through the state. So we think we have a really good opportunity with federal help to make this a reality. So that's our request. Very simplistic, but that is it. So
Thank you.
we appreciate you being here. And also, on behalf of the MPO and the Chamber Transportation Committee, You've always been there and responsive to us anytime we've had questions, and we appreciate that so much, and we appreciate working with you. So thank you for being here.
Thank you, Ron. I'd also now like to introduce, and he's going to have some various questions. I know you have a message to deliver to us, but I forward to Rod, and Rod, I lost you. Rod's a tremendous friend to the chamber. He comes to all of our events. I talk to him almost on a daily basis, don't we, Rod?
Yeah, absolutely.
He's a tremendous asset to us here at the chamber, so I really appreciate Rod here in the county. Dan Miller, he's chair of the Government Affairs. I'd like him to say a few words, and he's going to have different items. We've recently done a membership survey. It's interesting the number of things that are of primary interest to our community and especially our membership. But you could guess that roads, transportation, and infrastructure is always at the top of the list. But I'll let Dan sort of start off, and he'll turn it over to you. Dan?
Eldon, I had an idea that maybe before we start asking questions that might be answered by representatives' message to us.
I'll turn it over to you.
Okay,
You do whatever
I'd
you
say,
want to do. Okay.
David, if it's all right with you, you can give us your message. And then there may be some questions that we had that will be answered already, so we can make it efficient that way. After your message, then we can talk about some of these priorities that Eldon referred to, and then we can open it up to a little bit of just discussion. Is that all right?
Yeah, are you gonna eat first or?
No, we're not eating.
Not eating.
We're just here to
Okay,
drink and listen to, have some exchange, really.
okay.
Yeah,
Okay,
okay?
that's fine.
Good. Thanks for coming.
Well, good morning. I think we've just about crowded this room out. You know, from an engineering architectural thing, I'm not sure we want to know the room capacity. But no, my message is a little different than we were playing with some ideas of what to talk about. But primarily what I want to show is there's something going on in West Virginia. There's a transformation underway. Now, I wish I could say that it involved all the highway transportation problems, take care of the transportation problem, because I don't care what time of day it is you come to Morgantown, you can't get around here. The traffic is just horrible. And I don't know, with the football season all coming on and all, whether it's gonna get any better, but I agree. Joe and I have numbers of conversations about how we need to work more closely together with Charleston to be able to coordinate that. And as far as the Corps of Engineers, we've had numbers of meetings with them about this, about the locks here. And I'm expecting to hear back from them what their revised plan was, because personally I rejected their first idea what they were gonna do. So we'll see from there. But let me just start with some prepared remarks. I'm just curious here from this, with this, the change in administration and all. How many of you all out there have started your own company at one time or another? Okay, over half of you have done that. That's encouraging. So I know that's my background, was starting my own company. And what I'm saying is that one of the questions I like to ask when we have these discussions is, when we have roundtables, or it could be a major chamber meeting, what made America great? I want you to think about that. It's a question I like to ask. What made America great? And when I ask that to these groups, and I'm not expecting you to answer that, I just want, what made America great? And what I've done over the last number of years, I've got 2 notebooks full of ideas of what people said, what made America great. Just think about that on it. And similarly, I think we should be asking another question, that's what's held West Virginia back from achieving its full potential and being at the mainstream of the economic strength that's going on around the country? What's happened over the years? The fact that in my lifetime we used to have 6 congressmen. Now we're down to 3. And after the next election, next census, we'll probably drop to 2. What's happened? What's, and I want to submit to you that I think one of our biggest problems we've had in West Virginia is that we've lacked confidence. We haven't been willing to take a risk. Too many times we've sat back and the thing. Now, I'm not saying at all that West Virginians and our businesses and our families, that they don't have some vision and desires and aspirations. I understand. I know they do. I know they do. But I just think we've lacked the confidence to carry it out, to try it. We've hesitated too much. Now there's a line I like to kind of like there's a story that goes around about the 4 frogs on a log. Maybe you've heard that story of the 4 frogs on a log. One of them decides to jump off. How many frogs are left? 4. Just saying and thinking about doing it doesn't make it happen. And that's what I think has happened around West Virginia, is that we have a lot of desire, a lot of thoughts, a lot of process, but we don't carry it out. We got dreams, great ideas with that. And Professor Petty from OSU made a statement. He said, confidence is the stuff that turns thoughts into actions. So what are we doing about this morning? Well, how are we talking about our thoughts and actions? Because I think every community, what we have to do is inspire them. We got to find a way to get people try instead of sitting back and waiting for someone else to do it. So in the past year, that's why I'm encouraged with what's happening nationally, and talk in terms of confidence and taking action on things. Nationally, the consumer confidence level is as high as it's been in 17 years. Our business community, when they do the index on the business consumer index, or not the business confidence index, it's the highest it's been in 20 years. 95.1% of businesses across America are saying they have a more positive outlook than they had 4 or 5 years ago. Something's happening globally, nationally. And what I'm trying to find out is how do we stimulate that for West Virginia so that we fit into the mainstream of development and growth. And I got to say, I think in some ways, positively thinking, West Virginia is starting to feel that. Look at last year in the second quarter of last year, West Virginia had the second strongest GDP growth in the country. Second. When was the last time in our lifetime we saw that kind of growth? We were only behind Texas. And then we have the, by year end, because that was just one quarter, by year end, we had more economic growth on the percentage-wise than any other state. That's something to be proud of, our economic growth with. So what we were cited for, these polls that we're taking, they looked at GDP, they looked at our increase in personal income, and the fact that we had a 1.3% drop in unemployment. Now, since the election, and I think that's been some of what's triggered some of this, is a change in administration. Coal production in West Virginia is up 16%. We're exporting now 61% more coal than we had the year before. In the year before. Our coal mines, we've added 1,340 new coal mining jobs across West Virginia. 3 coal mines have already opened up with us. And in the construction, where I've spent most of my career in the construction industry, 4,300 jobs have been created in West Virginia. Now, that's the second strongest in the country. Excuse me. California is the second strongest. West Virginia is the strongest in construction activity going on with it. Now, it may not be roads in Mon County and in Morgantown, but you're going to see more of that because with the bond issue, when I talked to Jim Justice, he knows the importance of focusing more dollars up here. And that's why when we passed that road bond issue, that those are some of the triggers that we're looking for with that. So how do all these statistics, how does that manifest itself? Let me just say, I want you to understand that there is this sense of confidence that's starting to come around in West Virginia that makes me feel more positive about it. Look at what's going on if you step back out of the woods and look at what's happening in West Virginia. Starting with Northrop Grumman, one of America's largest aerospace industries, has now acquired Orbital ATK over in Mineral County. And they're going to invest $125 million in West Virginia over there. Northrop Grumman is going to give us a new lease on life, particularly as it respects aerospace. Boeing has now acquired Aurora Spaceflight down in Clarksburg. That's again another major company looking at West Virginia and seeing the potential that we have here, and the workforce, the education level that we have to be able to do this. Hino Motors is the third largest truck manufacturer in around the world. Hino Motors over in Wood County, they're now going to double the size of their operation in Wood County, and they're going to add another line, and they're adding 250 more jobs with it. You see the enthusiasm, see something going on? This is what we're talking about, is all that's just happened in the last year and a half. Something's in the water, something has changed. Some of the attitude has changed, and West Virginia is going to be the beneficiary of it. If we look just down the road from here, not too far from here, the Meadowbrook Mall is going to undergo a massive renovation to try to get people back into the stores again on that. The occupancy at the high-tech park is now the highest it's been in 10 years. That's important to be able to understand. There, it went through some tough times, but because some of the confidence of people, their businesses are coming back with. There's an electric arc furnace up on the Ohio River in Mingo Junction. They used to be part of Wheeling Steel. Thanks to some of the trade issues that have taken place, there's a now company going to invest $500 million to start this. Wheeling, the steel industry in the upper Ohio Valley is taking a real hit. But now with this tariff and some of the tax changes that we put in place last December, they're going to put 500 jobs in and $500 million into that investment. And they're considering opening up a roll line for that. So maybe it's the beginning of genesis of some of the steel. We're not going to get back to where we were in the 40s and 50s in steel making. But what we can have is some boutique operations, and this is one that they're talking about. Fairmont University and Piedmont are putting together aerospace programs. And right now, and the reason for that is because they're finding out the quality of people that they're graduating at Piedmont. Every one of them gets a job when they graduate. They have 100% placement in aerospace. And we're seeing that's in part why Boeing, Northrop Grumman, Lockheed Martin, they're looking again at what we can do in West Virginia because they're seeing something more confident with it. Toyota in Buffalo, West Virginia, not necessarily in this area, but you remember that Toyota makes the engine blocks down there. They're increasing their operation. They're going to increase, not expand their operation, and adding 120 more jobs with it. $115 million investment with that. And then, kind of dear to my heart a little bit, is showing that level of confidence, how it's trickling down to everybody, has been in the craft breweries. I don't know whether you all enjoy craft beer, but it's not too far from here. I just was over the last week at the Screech Owl Brewery over in Preston County. I strongly recommend take a look at that sometimes. Just take a little trip over there, because here's a guy that drove a truck for 30 years, but he saw something happening in West Virginia. It's no longer those long sad faces, but rather there's a potential in getting into this. So he parked his truck and opened up a brewery. And now he's expanding and he's offering food now over there. But you go on, you look at the Mountain State Brewery down in Tucker County. Now, they were bottling and canning over in Baltimore. They're bringing it back because they see some activity, the positiveness of what's going on in West Virginia. And it's Stumptown Ale. It's another small craft brewery. They're doubling their operation. So large they can't operate in their existing building, so they're opening one in the industrial park over in Tucker County. We can go on with this. Our shale gas is giving us incredible opportunities if we just play our cards right with this. China Energy was here last week. They're reinforcing what they want to do. They want to come here because they see the potential of investing in West Virginia. They like the tax projects that have been undertaken, the reforms that have been done with this, and they're looking at how they might invest in the petrochemical industry. I could go on and on with the petrochemical, what we may be able to do with the ethane storage hub, but you got China Energy, and then you have, Rod was able to get the German embassy to come. We wanted the German embassy because the German community is by far the largest petrochemical complex in Europe. And they're looking for investments and where they might be able to expand. And we're sitting on the gas. We have the raw product that they need. So they want to come over here, and so we have an excellent meeting last week with them to interview other firms in the area to see how is the workforce, what's the attitude, positiveness, and when I left the meeting with the Commerce Minister, he just said, that's not what I was expecting to hear. West Virginia was demonstrating a more positive look than they have had in the past. I think somehow we've turned the corner with this, and we're opening up something that makes it more positive with it. So they're looking for more investment with it. I can say the regulatory environment climate has also improved in such a way that we have the only the only refinery we have in West Virginia, up in Newell, West Virginia, is now, thanks to Trump's administration and reversing some of the draconian regulations they put on, they're talking about expanding. This is kind of nice to have as a refinery in West Virginia, and what the potential they can do. So they're more enthused with this. But let me just say that there are so many more good news stories with this. I know some people don't like what I hear. Some people don't like how Trump sends his message, but they love his policies. And this resurgence, this positiveness, is just in the last year and a half. Just imagine what things could be like with this. So, West Virginia, I think I see it in my travels. I think it's coming out, but they're emerging, they're coming back out. Ever since that recession that when it hit in 2008, 2009, I'm seeing people more positive about looking. The investments that we just talked about all over West Virginia. Small businesses, large businesses, people talking about trying to make something better with it. So we're coming back. We're coming back with a pride and a confidence that we've not seen before. And I got to tell you a little bit. I think West Virginia's got a little swagger going. Kind of like our football team right now. A little swagger. All I can say is, what a difference an election can make. This is going to be an important one for West Virginia, how we continue this message. So we've got hope, we've got strength, we've got people investing in West Virginia, we've got the individuals in West Virginia investing. We just got to keep that going. So Joe, your job in Charleston, you take care of, we'll take care of it in Washington. Let me just close there and then see what questions you might have with it. Thank you very much.
You mentioned the oil and gas.
Yes.
And I think you're one of the few representatives in this region that can probably have a very major impact on that, and that is this underground storage basin that many of you have heard about. It's possibly competing with the Texas Gulf Coast. And I think some of the representatives in Texas have had a different opinion that it may not be needed because the infrastructure is already in Texas and we need it up here. The other argument is that if we put a second set of infrastructure for underground storage basins up here, it actually has a national security value, because if something weather-related hurricanes hit in Texas, it can have an impact across the whole country when it comes to the energy. So could you maybe just expand a little bit more on what you might be able to do for promoting the federal money that may be needed in order to get this off the ground, or at least started?
Okay.
And I believe we've got $1 or $2 billion already in hand that's starting this, but that I think is going to have one of the biggest impacts that most of the local politicians really can't have a say in. So,
All right. He just raised a question. How many of you have a sense or some working knowledge you've heard about the ethane storage? Okay, then most of you have. This began maybe 4 or 5 years ago. I was in a meeting down in Charleston, and the engineer and me, I can't get the engineer out. I'm always thinking that, okay, how can I take what's some problem and turn it into something that's positive? And what they were talking about is the fact that we're shipping all our gas down to the Gulf Coast. This is what's happened with West Virginia. We're constantly giving up our resources to someone else to develop. And if we're ever going to diversify our economy, and that's number one on my agenda, is the diversification of it, so that, because not everyone wants to work in a coal mine or a steel mill or a chemical plant. But let's find out what else we can do to diversify our economy. So we picked up on that, and we passed some legislation 4 years ago to start this project. And we didn't get anywhere, quite frankly, with the Obama administration. And I'm not here to trash Obama. That's not my point. But the administration, we just didn't have the same attitude towards this ethane storage that we have, because I think what they were trying to understand is, how much is there really, and is it going to last? We now know, we're talking about ethane, the capacity here for 40 to 50 years or more. So now we've got that, so we've had the opportunity, and it was in Morgantown, actually. We had Secretary Perry here. And Secretary Perry is head of the Department of Energy. I asked Rick, it's one of my favorite questions I like to ask. Mike, you might ask the same question sometime yourself. What keeps you up at night? When you were governor of Texas, what was your worst nightmare? He didn't miss a beat. He came back, he snapped right back and said, my worst nightmare, there was a Category 5 hurricane hitting the Gulf Coast and wiping out my petrochemical industry in the Houston area. That's where it all happens down there. You know, we talk about a cracker in West Virginia. They have 23 crackers in Houston. 17 of them went down when Hurricane Harvey hit. 17 out of 23 crackers went down. So when I talked to Perry, he called his staff, Brian McCormick, called me back, well, maybe a couple of days later after the hurricane hurt, and he said, your name just came up in one of our meetings, and that was, he wanted you to know that there's no difference. Hurricane Harvey was only a Category 4, this very Category 5. He wanted you to know, he said, tell McKinley that there's no difference between a Category 4 and a Category 5. It wiped us out. So from that point on, Rick Perry has become one of us to build a secondary petrochemical storage and complex up in the Northeast, and particularly in the Appalachian area. He's on board. We've had the conversation, he and I have had numbers of meetings. So we went over to the White House. We sat down with the president in the Oval Office. We talked about the project there. The president's on board. What we have to do is just keep moving. It's one of those things that we have to have the confidence that we're on the right track. If we keep it here, we keep that ethane here in storage facilities, we need about 100 million barrels of ethane stored in underground storage. In salt caverns and hard rock can be created to do that. So once we have that, then the industry is going to come. What we're looking for is not only is the cracker facility, but we want the downstream. Once you get the downstream, that's where the jobs, that's where the diversification is all going to take place. And so what Trump his position has been, they'll support loan guarantees. That was huge, because what we were on verge of doing away with all federal loan guarantees. For this project, he's made sure it stays on the books. So that's right now, we have the capability of funding this project. We're talking about $12 billion. Now what we have to do is find individuals that help us create this and get the cracker facility up at Monaca, get that thing underway, get the PTT when it gets an announcement. What they're looking forward to is a little bit is how reliable is our ethane stream to be able to have the particular of the gas supply that they need to have to operate with. We'll have it if we can have this facility. So this is a game changer. This, I know that's a cliche, but you watch and see what happens as this thing starts to unfold. There's already the first projects underway over in Ohio, in Monroe County. They're building a salt dome structure there to be able to take and store the ethane over there. Other questions? Is that?
Can you speak a little bit about the geological, the Ohio, Pennsylvania, and West Virginia Geological Survey came together and did a very extensive,
Yeah,
detailed report that showed I think West Virginia shined well above the other two states.
But I'm not worried about the other two states outshining us, but we did, you're right. It showed West Virginia had the capacity. This is a regional thing. We have to think more regionally than just West Virginia, okay? That Ohio River, that little map, that line on the map that says this is West Virginia, this is Pennsylvania, we gotta look past that. And this is a regional program. And I feel very comfortable that we're on the right track with this. So yes, all the capacities here, we just have to have individuals and the lending institutions willing to step up, understanding that the federal government is gonna back them up on this. So this, we have some tremendous potential here with this. We're also, and what it'll do is I believe you're gonna see other crackers then come around. Because if Houston can support 23, I would think we can support more than 1 or 2 or 3. But we've got to take a regional approach towards it. Does that help out on that? Yes, sir.
Mark Sestari from Southern Airways. We are now the fastest growing regional airline in the country. We do business in Pittsburgh, DC area, and in Texas. And to your point, everything is gravitating towards Texas because of the environment, low taxes, whatever. One of our biggest challenges is recruiting young people to this region, whether it be West Virginia or Central PA. What can be done to make the region, I've never been to West Virginia until a year and a half ago when we started flying here. It's a wonderful place. The people are great. It's a great workforce. I don't think that perception is well known outside of the region. And I think it's especially not well known or appreciated by younger people. So what can be done to affect those two things, to make people who aren't here take a look at West Virginia?
One of the things we're doing in education, we just put $2.5 billion in our education program, federal. We know that the education all takes place at the state level, but the federal government can provide resources to be able to do this and to help them out with it. And what we're looking at in West Virginia particularly, we've led the charge on that. We've got our fingerprints. I've got several amendments in that education bill. So what we want to do is go back, step back in time a little bit, because my generation, those of us that are in the late 60s, 70s, we said everyone should go to college. And we geared our education around that. That we think now has been a mistake. We should be going back to more career and technical education to remove the stigmas attached to, oh, those are the guys with the machine shop in the basement. No, those are the guys that they're going to keep our engine running across America, is to be able to do that. So what we're now is refocusing. I've been meeting with school superintendents all over the district about how we can revitalize our career and technical education so that there are people capable of being mechanics. We left that, we walked away from that. The whole country did. And West Virginia is now starting to come back with that. Preston County has one of the most adventuresome projects that they have over there. They're leading the state in their career and technical education. So the point is, I think you're going to find from what they're doing, all these other companies that have invested in acquiring companies in West Virginia, they're seeing the workforce is being developed here. They feel if they put $115 million or $125 million, they're going to be able to have the workforce. And with you, it's aerospace. We've got to find more pilot people that are around that industry, how to do the repairs. Because down at Pratt & Whitney, they were rebuilding. Most of you, I didn't know until I walked into the plant. They're building the jet engines down in Pratt & Whitney with West Virginia people. Because the workforce, what's been trained at their community college, and like they're ready to do that work. So the word is getting back, and I think that's in part why Grumman got invested more into it. I think Lockheed Martin, you're going to see more investments in aerospace because of some of what's happening in our education to treat our aerospace and make our airports more usable for that. So we're looking at career technical education and aerospace to answer both of your questions.
Great, thank
Okay?
you.
Yes, sir.
A few years ago, we had the Blue Ribbon Commission here. Oh, by the way, I'm Bill Rice. I'm on the MUB board amongst MPO and whatever. But a few years ago, we had the Blue Ribbon Commission to make a study on the highways in West Virginia. Okay. Basically, it was a big book that got put on the shelf. So now we have the governor arms out the roads to prosperity. The federal highway transportation system has its documents piled thick. We don't have a budget to do that. How does the gas industry push the envelope because it's dollars that needed to put blacktop and concrete on the road? how do we approach the gas industry? Because it talks about severance tax, you can talk about value-added tax, you can talk about income tax of the people, because you'll have more people here. What's the right approach to get the gas business to put money in the transportation system?
That's a good question, how to do it, because they're saying we're already paying our fair share, okay? And you're right, one of the problems in our road, because that was where I came from, the construction. My first job was was back in '65, was with the State Road Commission before it went through all the iterations of where it is now. I've never seen roads in worse shape than they are today, ever. Someone that, I've designed roads, I've designed bridges, I understand. It's frustrating to me to see that the argument that Tom Smith and his predecessor, Paul Maddox, said, we don't have the resources, we don't have the money. So I took that was one of my messages to Washington, to make sure that the FAST Act, we now have more money coming to West Virginia, more money coming to West Virginia federal government ever had under Bob Burt when he was writing checks to help out. Then you couple that, but the problem when we had Justice, he said he didn't have the matching money to match it, so you all passed a road bond issue. So now it's a matter, to me, quite frankly, it's a matter of priorities. We have more money coming from the federal government, and we have now a bond issue, what was it, $1.5 billion, or what was, you remember what was the size of the road bond issue?
1.6.
1.6 billion. You have to combine those two, you've got the resources to do it. It's a matter, quite frankly, with Tom, we're having some more conversations, not always pleasant particularly, but I really admire him. He's got to take care of 55 counties and all those. It's a matter of priorities, how to get those roads taken care of.
But again, back to the gas industry, adding dollars to make the transportation system better. What's the best
It would require an act of legislature to be able to possibly change the severance tax, to be able to do that, to extract more money from them. You could, but you understand the pushback on that is going to. So I don't have an answer from the federal government on that, how I could force a gas company, gas dollars or so, to put money back into West Virginia. But I think that we have the money. We don't need to go after the gas industry. We really don't. We have the resources to be able to do it. It's just a matter of priorities to do this. My biggest problem I would have with the gas is I don't like the condition the roads are leaving them in. They're supposed to be bonding their roads and they're done. But when we've talked under Paul Maddox, prior to that, you don't call up the bond issue until after the drilling's finished. Otherwise, you're paving it, and again, you're gonna have to repave it again in 5 years again. So there's some problems with it. There's states trying to do it. One of the big issues, someone here was with the highway, you weren't highway. Good night. West Virginia's got, there's some areas, one of the districts I visited used to have 21 employees to be able to take care of slips, repairs, and pothole down. They're down to 5 now. We've got to figure, I don't understand. I'm waiting for another meeting with Jim to find out why are we manning up our district offices and Department of Highways so that we can take care of some of these issues.
Well, because of wages, primarily, to find the people that fit the wages that you're going to put in the transportation system, and that's why, because the gas business pays more.
It could be. I'm not going to argue with you. I think, but we're talking about someone that's going to go out and do a slip repair, or someone that's going to do a patch of pothole, and we're not. The gas companies they're not doing that, so it's not competition from that. We just don't have a workforce right now that's ready to go over and to do this kind of work. It may be contracting out, we have to do something, but that we've gone, again, down to 5 in one of the districts, down from 21. That's not right, that's not do that. How about any other?
I have a question.
Yes.
So I think all the economic growth is really exciting, and I would hope to think that at some point West Virginia starts to measure how well we're doing, not just by the growth of the economy, but how well we are from a health perspective. I'm calling Harshbarger, by the way, Wellbeing Solutions. So we all know that one of our great troubles in our state is that we top the worst health list for just about everything. And I'd like to hear what your thinking is around. And I think part of what contributes to some of our health issues is some of the rollbacks that you're talking about with protecting the environment. But I think I'd love to hear a dialogue around not an either or way of being, but a way of how do we value our economy, our environment, and our health in a way that everybody benefits from.
That's fair. That's fair. It's a little broad, the way we describe it on that. But one of the things we're trying to find out in healthcare, because the Obamacare is here on the books. There's no sense trying to do away with that anymore.
Well, actually, I'm not even just talking about healthcare treatment. I'm talking about creating a culture of thriving health and prevention.
How do we change people's behavior when we lead the nation in sedentary lifestyle? We lead the nation in obesity. We lead the nation in cigarette and tobacco use.
Sugar consumption.
How do we do? How do
diabetes,
you want the federal
obesity, that's
government
my
stepping
job.
in and saying, get off your couch and get away from your cell phone or whatever on the thing? How do we do that?
Well, again, I think from a policy perspective, when we're talking about building infrastructure, we make sure that we have walkable, bikeable, safe street communities.
Yes.
I think there are a lot of ways that we can do that looking at policy. Yeah.
I think one thing that's going to help our health in healthcare is we've got to do a better job in primary care. We've got to get people so that they're healthier, so that they want to do those kinds of things. But we don't have good primary care yet in West Virginia.
And
we don't have the
access
level-
to it.
And access to it.
Access to it by everybody. Yeah.
Yes. But one of the biggest, and so that goes into one of the biggest fights we're into right now. I'm leading this. Some national group is now supporting me on this issue. I've been fighting back because the biggest driver of healthcare costs, where your dollars go, is prescription drugs. Prescription drugs. So there's one I know we can focus in on. Because that trying to deal with obesity and others, that's going to be more complicated because it's going to be how your diet, what you do, and in your activities, what they do in school. But what we can do on prescription drugs is going to lower healthcare costs. So what we're doing is we got two bills that we're working on right now. One that's getting particular attention is called 340B. Now I'm going to get down to weeds in a minute on it. But 340B is a program that Big Pharma, as you know, Big Pharma has to provide discounts for drugs to hospitals and healthcare providers. And the fact that they have this discounted drug price, they've been fighting it now for years. They want to reverse this so that we don't have the discount anymore. We don't have the 340B program. But that's what's keeping some of our hospitals functional, is being able to provide low-cost drugs in our hospitals at 340B. So there's a program right now to do away with that. I'm leading that effort. I've got 199 co-sponsors on this. We've met with the president about it. We see we're at odds some on this. But so I'm fighting Big Pharma on that because that's one way to do it is make sure that program stays big because it has worked. It has a track record of working. But Big Pharma is controlling. They don't like the fact that they've been subsidizing this project for all these years. Okay, they're meeting a Scotch Irishman that's ready to fight them on this thing. So we're going to continue, and that's why across the country some of the people are supporting. The other affects this area right here is on generic drugs. I don't know whether you're aware of some of the pharmaceutical companies when their patent expires. They're by law, federal law, they're supposed to turn over a certain sampling of their drug so that a generic company can manufacture it. And it's competition. But what's happened as a result, they're losing millions of dollars when they turn it over. So they're delaying the implementation, they're delaying getting the supply to some generic drug manufacturers across the country. They're deliberately doing it. And then they're paying a penalty because they know they're in the wrong, but they pay the penalty. But they've made so many millions of dollars during this 2-year period, 2 to 3 years while it is adjudicated, that it pays for itself. So we're ratcheting this up. We got a Fast Generic Act that says you can't do that, and we're going to triple the damages on this if we go on with it. So if you want to do this, you want to keep delaying giving the products, it could very well be Mylan, it could be some of the other generics that we have across this country. Giving them that product so that they can start making it. If you don't do it, it's going to cost you a lot more money than it has on the previous bill. So we're getting a lot of support on that one as well because we're determined that we're going to lower prescription drug prices. How about another question? Anything else? Okay, you got it.
This is a question, but more of a statement too, so forgive me, I can be a little blunt. you ask what made America great, and it goes back, Alex de Tocqueville did this thing way back, and it was about opportunity. I think that's what you were gonna say. And the main reason we had opportunity, there was nobody to hold us back. There was no aristocracy of Europe, there was no church of Europe that held us back. We wanted to do something, go out, cut some trees, and have at it. So that opportunity is what we have today, and this is actually more to us as a community. Tip O'Neill said that all politics is local, so you being elected is actually a local service, not necessarily there. I think it's the opposite. So to me, it's not necessarily about the minutia of the details today and the policies to make our community better, but we as a business community, we have to recognize that the changes in Washington are having an impact here, and if we don't have that attitude that you've just described today in Washington, the alternative is bad. And we had 8 years of that alternative where business is bad. Business is the villain. Business is the solution. And we can do it responsibly, we can do it so everybody benefits, but capitalism and the business community benefit from opportunistic policies. And so we have an obligation. If we're not careful, the business community is going to be hurt if we don't support candidates that have a pro-opportunity, pro-growth agenda. So I think it's more this statement for us as a community. We have to support people like this, or we're going to feel the ramifications of it.
Well, thank you, that wasn't, you said that just the way I asked you to. But he's right, I want to have more entrepreneurism and stimulus that's going on. John Hammock is a good example of that, what he's done here with his company, with Key Logic. To start from scratch and to build up. I'm sure many of you have examples like that where you can take a risk. What we have to do is we have to take that, we have to be able to teach them, kids, the young generation, how to take a risk. And one of the issues that you were touching on, but you didn't use the term, is removing the uncertainty. That's what happened during these 8 years. That they just didn't know there was going to be another regulation that was going to come down the pike the next week, or something else was going to, so they just, look, I ran a business for years. We just step back and we wait until the dust clears a little bit and we see our way through it and then we advance again. But the dust never settled. It was constant, more regulations that were coming out. And I don't think it was very productive. Now I'm not saying, because like what you mentioned, we're not trying to roll back regulations that harm the environment. I think that would be wrong to do. But let's just get them back so that they're more reasonable, that they can be backed up with science. That's all we're trying to do. There are people in Washington, I'll be very candid with, they want to do away with the EPA. They want to do away with that. No. We can't afford to do that. We need a regulatory body to be a cross-check for all of us, or what we're trying to do. But if we can remove the uncertainty, that's what's happened here. Grumman came here, Boeing came here, because they can start seeing now in the last year and a half something that the clouds are parting, that it's a little clear how they might be able to succeed in business and to be able to work it here. And in West Virginia, they're finding has the greatest opportunity. Because one of the things, and they're also finding out here at WVU, working with Gordon Gee, is to try to find 3 areas that we've been focused on and trying to find federal grants. The federal grants into West Virginia have now, in the last year and a half, have gone up 30%. 30% increase in federal grants coming here for research. And there's a research in healthcare, defense, and energy. That's what Gordon Gee is trying to keep us on the map. If we can put the resources into there, other businesses will follow, because they want to be where the freshest research is going on right now. So I'm seeing some very positive things, and we've got to find people more like John that take a risk and keep expanding their operation. Because if we can eliminate the risk, I think more people will invest, and you'll get more people with confidence again with it. Okay, there was one more question. Yes, sir.
Andrew Price, I'm candidate for county commission this year, but my full-time job, I'm an EMS pilot in Wetzel County for helicopter service. And talking about, I had the good fortune to have breakfast with a group of professionals from Generation Morgantown, and a young lady there has a physical and nutritional program that she's started on. And what she's doing is addressing these young kids, and what's called warrior kids. And what I see, and I've worked in this field for a number of years, what I see is a generational thing, where we have a diabetes issue, we have a weight-related issue, it all leads back into the opioid issue and everything. We need to break that chain. And in order to do that, we need to break that chain at the elementary level and work forward. And we need to break it with the families so that we move forward as a kid influences that family more than anything that us adults can do. So if we can do that and move and get these young professionals like Mickey into the high school and elementary level, then we can move forward and break this horrible thing that we've got going. I mean, I see the end result of it every stroke and every heart attack that we haul, and that's our job. I mean, we're getting young people with strokes and heart attacks, and it's not a very good thing in West Virginia. And we've got to address that, and along with that, we'll address our workforce issue where you can't get a CDL driver in there because you can't pass a drug test. Well, unfortunately, MTech here in Morgantown, Washington County, is trying to address that and offering classes. We're building that workforce, but we're at the beginning. And so as a county commission candidate, I want to be the end result of the crackers and building in this infrastructure. So I bless you for getting us started. I am very optimistic about the future in this county and the state, but we've got to address the initial issues and move forward.
Thank you. The whole opioid problem, I just didn't, because I don't know where we take it. We could talk about the opioid issue for over an hour here, and we're putting the resources. Where we have our fingerprints on that is to try to get resources back into West Virginia. That's the hardest hit state in the nation over this. They use formulas over in Washington so often as just by population or so. So West Virginia was getting. We wound up having to put legislation together, and it was passed and signed into law that says it is to go to those counties and communities and districts that have the worst problem. And we're at 52 deaths per 100,000. But we weren't getting additional money. So it infuriated me about this because they're playing bureaucratic games. So what we've done is we got the language that says it has to go to those big counties that are disproportionate. We're now getting 5 times the amount of money. 5 times the amount of money we did a year and a half ago. We're moving in the right direction, but we got to find out, and I met with some folks yesterday, and I did last week with numbers of roundtable discussion. Where's that money supposed to go? We got $4 billion. $4 billion is going to be spent this year on opioids. Is it to go for education? Is it going to go in enforcement? Or is it going to go in rehabilitation?
The answer is yes.
Yes, the answer is yes. The question that we're fighting over is where is the greatest proportion? I would say the education is where I really want to see it, and the rehabilitation. Because some people were getting caught in these drug problems that it was none of their making. Their doctors gave, when I had my cochlear implant, they gave me a 30-day supply of oxycodone. Sheriff, his daughter had a wisdom teeth pulled, and she was given 15 days supply of oxycodone. Now you tell me why you would need to have oxycodone that level. So our doctors are changing. We're working with them now. Right now, we're trying to find out in Washington. We've already had meetings with DEA. We've had it with the distribution. What we're asking is now we're asking the big pharma to come in, and we want to know what they knew of the problem and when did they know it, and what are they going to do about it? Because we think they have a role in this. Because the distributors threw their hands up. They said it's not our being, but they're the ones that actually distributed the drugs into West Virginia. So we have some real problems with it. So thank you for your interest on that. We're going to continue focusing, but our primary is going to be to make sure that it goes to areas that are hardest hit. Okay?
I have one more, if that's
Yeah.
okay. One thing I would caution, I hate to say it this way, we have higher revenue collections than ever in the history of this country, but we still run a $1 trillion deficit. The Republicans always say, we're going to cut it, we're going to balance the budgets, and the Republicans never. It is what it is, it is what it is. Please, don't make that mistake again, because the Republicans in the early 2000s had a wonderful opportunity, and they spent just as much or more. And if it happens again, the pendulum's going to swing so far to the left. We have to be careful about our spending. That's the only thing I would ask about overall.
And he's right on it, in part. 10, 11, and 12, we actually spent less money in the discretionary. What we don't have.
All right, discretionary.
Okay, discretionary, because there's a difference. Now I'm going to get down the weeds here in a minute. If you look at the pie chart and you see where we're spending, Social Security, Medicaid, and Medicare, just 20 years ago, represented 43% of the spending in this country. It's now 71%. That's untouchable. Right now, that's untouchable. So when you look at your pie chart, when you're trying to feed something, 71% of it can't be touched. So we've been working over in what's called discretionary. Other than discretionary is our military. Do we want to cut our military again?
Some, yes.
We did that, and we got so low, planes were falling out of the sky. So we had a real problem with that. We're building the military back up. We're trying to put more resources back in because we've become, whether we like it or not, we've become the world's cop. The UN doesn't move in on this thing. Their countries are expecting us to stand in and defend them. So our military has to be, and then you have, that represents 19%. So now we're up to, okay, well, you do the math, okay? Now you're up to 89, 90%. Then you have interest payments are 6%. That's what we pay. So what we're talking about is this little sliver, how we make the changes. So for 3 years, we actually reduced all those discretionary spending. Now we got a problem because with 10,000 senior citizens like myself, they're coming on Social Security every day, 10,000 added every day. That 71% is going to grow again, and it's going to grow again. If it went from 43% of federal spending to 71% in just 20 years, where's it going to go until you're rid of us? You know, these baby boomers that are passing through the system. So yes, we need to do it, but how we want to address or how we need to address those mandatory spending of Medicaid, Medicare, and Social Security. Because back to her question was, I was very supportive of Medicaid, the expansion on Medicaid, to make sure that we had people that otherwise were getting health care, they're going to get health care now. But we know that was going to cost us something. Okay? I guess I've probably run over, I don't know what the time frame here is, but
I think we're still good. Was there a question back there?
I did have a quick question, a little bit of a follow-up to what he was saying. The big industry is coming in, and that's absolutely fantastic. And you're quoting numbers of jobs that they're hiring. What level of jobs are those? Are those master's degrees, doctorate degrees? Are those trade? Are those minimum wage? What level of hiring are we doing?
That's a good question. They're not the masters and doctorates degrees on it, and they're not minimum wage.
Mm-hmm.
What we're trying to do in Washington, and I think Justice is doing the same thing, we're trying to rebuild our manufacturing base back in this country. We've lost our middle class. We were rapidly losing our middle class, and so we need to restore that as much as we can. Is focus back, and that's what some of the Trump's tax program was, to incentivize companies to come back to America. Already, we're approaching $400 billion of repatriated money that was sitting overseas. The companies that made profits that they were not bringing back to America, and it was being used to invest in economic development over in Europe and elsewhere. 400 billion of that is coming back already to America. Once that comes back, you're going to see more money that we'll have for infrastructure and other repairs and other things that we have to do with it. But the job over the economic base, I think it's going to be middle class, it's going to be craft people. That's why we're restructuring the Career and Technical Education CTE program. I don't remember, have I been to the CTE program here in Mon?
Yes.
Okay. So you start listing all those and find out how successful are they. I know in Preston, I know in Mineral, I can see the success. I know down in Harrison County, the success they've had over on the eastern, on the western shore with the PRT program, Pleasant, Ritchie, and Taylor County. How that's working out in Tyler County. I see how it's working. We've got to have those people workforce to be able to do it.
And my follow-up question to that is, and I think what is important to a lot of people in this room is, we have this money now coming in, how do we keep it in our state? With the youth, that we're talking about, we don't have anywhere to shop, eat, or we can't connect our cities back and forth. A lot of our businesses rely on people being able to afford housing. That's one of my stumps there is affordable housing, that these, middle class stays in the middle class structure, because middle class pay keeps just kind of dropping down. And I see it especially in this area and things to that effect, but we also need to be able to keep the money here. We are a border county. People can cross the state line and go spend their money in Pennsylvania or Ohio or Maryland or Virginia when you have these border counties. So I think it's just as important to keep the money that these people are making in our state as it is to bring the jobs to our state. And I wonder if there's some sort of focus group or focus program on that.
Those are, no, the federal government is not gonna mandate something.
No,
like
I'm
that,
not
okay?
talking more on
But
the
I think
state level,
what you need to hear a little bit is again, it's a process for, this transformation's only been underway for about 1.5 years now. Maybe, and I can say probably it began even under Obama. I'm not gonna say that he didn't have something contributed. So there's something going on right now that's, this sweeping economic impact that's happening in West Virginia on this. So I'm trying to figure out how I can best answer your question, because you hit on so many different things with this. That give it some time. For example, if you saw the July financial statement coming out of Charleston, the revenue, personal income revenue has come in, is now 14% higher than last year. That's what people that say that incomes are dropping, we don't see the evidence of that, not in West Virginia. Maybe around the country it may have, but not in West Virginia. We're seeing an increase in revenue. People are making more money and they're holding on to it than they have before. So I want to see a little bit more time to see how that unfolds, to see what happens when we get the manufacturing jobs where people can then they can afford to go out and buy a truck, or they can buy a house, or they do whatever with it. But we've got to rebuild this manufacturing base has to come back. If we need to diversify our economy. So that's again, I want to not be campaign mode. I just want to be more that things are moving in a positive way. And I see companies adding on. More individuals are adding employees. Something's going to happen if we can behave ourselves and don't overspend the money in Washington. But watch and see what happens with this tax. Did you see an impact on with the tax reform? Your paycheck?
I have not. I'm an independent contractor.
I'm sorry?
I'm an independent contractor. I haven't seen it yet. I won't see it until I get my taxes.
Well, okay. I think most people, did you see it on your paycheck?
Wait and see.
Yeah, that's fine to say. Most people have seen on their paycheck, they've had some increase in their take-home pay. Is on it. Yeah. Yes,
I want to go back to what Jason said just a minute ago. You said there's 3 untouchables: Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. In 1997, when Newt Gingrich was Speaker of the House, Bill Clinton, President at that time, signed the Welfare to Work legislation.
Yes.
And I believe it's still in effect, but not enforced to some degree. Then you cited the number, 2002
well,
or
let's
3 about
let's
the
just
40.
stay on that. That's not one of the 3. Welfare reform is certainly on the docket.
Okay,
And you were right. It was under Clinton, Bill Clinton, and then George Bush. There was a work requirement for you to get welfare. There was a work requirement.
Okay,
and then Obama came in and did away with it. And so we had 22 million people. I remember that 22 million people, up to that time, we had 22 million people on food stamps in America. And Obama went to 47 million.
Okay, and I would classify that under the Medicaid lump, if you will. So 2004 or 5, when you gave the number, 43% of the pie chart was costs you couldn't, or expenses you couldn't control because it's mandated. And then it went to 71%. Well, one way to get out of that is this growth cycle of the ones who are on the Medicaid side, put them back to work. I mean, make it a government program again like it was 20 years ago, so that they are working and providing income as opposed to not, and taking other people's dollars. Tough political call.
No, it's not. We've taken votes on it. But you understand, you gotta have 218 votes, and you have to have 60 votes in the Senate to do that.
And we need
Okay?
you there.
And we don't have that. We passed it out of the House, welfare reform, and it's stuck over in the Senate. Now, it took everything that we could possibly do to manipulate to get our 218 votes in the House to be able to pass that. Because what you have to understand is the big cities dominate the House. I didn't understand. I've had my civics class, I know years ago, but I didn't realize the power of big cities in the House of Representatives. Just some quick numbers. There are 22 congressmen from Los Angeles County. 22. There are 14 congressmen in Chicago, and there are 15 congressmen within a 10-mile radius of tip of Manhattan. Just those 3 towns that I've just been, they represent almost 10% of Congress. We haven't mentioned Miami, Dallas, Houston, Seattle, San Francisco, Denver. We go on and on. Big cities dominate. The urban centers don't like reform or welfare reform. So we have to be very careful how we're going to craft something so that we're not forcing people that otherwise can't find a job. But we're trying to find ways of getting them, lowering that from $47 million people on food stamps back down to 22. Because we have 6 million job openings across the country. 6 million. But we can't get this food stamp people. The food stamp, we know it has value, and I'm very supportive of the food stamp program because we know people need to have that. But do we need to have 25 million people on food stamps that maybe don't necessarily need to be on that? Okay?
We need to wrap up now.
Yes, thank you, thank you, Rod.
Okay.
Let's thank Congressman. I do want to add a couple things from Bill. Bill's one of my top cheerleaders. There's another way to get out of that cycle. That we'll die out of the baby boomers. When we die out of that cycle, there'll be a big drop. We won't see it.
We'll have to back up.
Another point that could be made is that there is no urban segment. We're not, West Virginia's not urban.
No, it's a rural versus, that's what I was trying to say, is we have, the fight is between big cities and rural America. That's where it comes down to.
That's right.
Yeah.
But we very much appreciate you coming out. I know your day with the chamber's not over. He's going to go and spend some time with some businesswomen. We very much appreciate that time as well. I know you have to cut it short today because you're going to go spend some time with the president on our behalf as well. But again, we very much appreciate your time with us. You're a good friend with our business community. We know that our largest economic sector continues to be government, but this is a time when we're doing well to fight to get out of that and get that diversity. So again, we thank you very much for your time.
Thanks.